The summer break is over and we're back for a bumper weekend in Tolka Park. The women's team cruised through the All Ireland group stages. We discussed the FAI Cup draws, and it's less than 1 week to go until the big European adventure. All to come on today's show. But first, Donny, how are you today, Donny? Great to have you back.
Hey Andy, good to see you again. You're looking resplendent in your pink headphones. It's a shame we don't have the visual to go with the audio here, but yeah, good to
Thank you,
be
Donny.
back. And I know it might have felt a little bit like, in some respects, a bit of a downtime. But looking at the notes here and the slate of things that are immediately in front of us, there's an awful lot of stuff going on. So yeah, plenty to salivate on or worry about, whatever your emotions are.
We have a lot to get through, Donny. We'll start with the very sad news over the weekend of Shelburne women's player Aveen Clancy. Her mother Siobhan very, very sadly passed away. Took everyone by surprise and shock. And I'm sure Donny speak for us all to say that we're heartbroken for Aveen. And we wish her and her family the very best in this very difficult time. And I know the club themselves will be offering all supports to Aveen and the Clancy family.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. I heard about it the day after the game. By all accounts, Avi and herself found out not long after the match. She played 75 minutes on Saturday. Performed very, very well, as per usual. And I just feel so sorry for her. She's in a really, really purple patch in her career now. Obviously, with the very recent multiple call ups into the Ireland senior squad. You know, competing on all fronts with Shells, really performing ably on the pitch to have something so tragic and unexpected, to just sort of hijack all of your sort of best laid plans is really, really difficult to deal with. So I know that the club, as you said, will do anything they can to help her and her family at this difficult time, and I'm sure, knowing we had Davey obviously on last week, talking with us, and I spoke about how good he has been for squad morale and for difficult sort of intangible things like this that can crop up from time to time. I'm sure the squad, who have a huge collective heart, will do everything they can as well to make sure that she gets through this time and in the best way possible. So yeah, our thoughts really go out to her and the whole family. Sorry, Andy, you're on mute there.
Apologies, Donny. Yeah, thank you for your comments there, Donny. You mentioned Sligo, so let's start there. It was the All Ireland end of the group stages. Are we getting some not comfortable, Donny, but a 5-0 win away to any team is impressive. Shells really are firing up, and they sent out a firing shot ahead of what's coming this weekend in Tolka Park.
Well, considering we're playing a team at the weekend, Andy, who's conceded, I think, 2 goals all season in the league, I wouldn't necessarily expect 5, but certainly we performed very, very well. Any remnants of cobwebs or anything like that might have been felt, by having a bit of downtime. There were a lot of players we spoke about previously when we discussed the game, the draw away at Bohemians in the previous tie in the group of this competition. There were a lot of players rested, and justifiably so. And that this was a bit more sort of getting back on the horse with an eye to obviously win the game and progress through the group, but as a bit of a dress rehearsal ahead of the game on Saturday coming. So it was a very enjoyable day, very enjoyable weather, and I'm sure most of our fans have seen by now the 2 unbelievable goals from distance that Noelle Murray scored. She scored 4 in total. I'd argue maybe even her first goal might have been the sort of the pick of the bunch for me, because she took an extra touch. She sold the defender a dummy. It was real vintage Noelle. And yeah, for me, like, just to see her back to her best, feeling full of confidence, brimming full of confidence to try one lob from about 35 yards in a game is shows a lot of confidence. To do it twice in the same half is incredible. Against a very able goalkeeper, it must be said as well. Not the biggest in stature, the Sligo goalkeeper, but she pulled off a set of magnificent saves throughout the game and actually commanded her area very well. So I know in isolation, perhaps the goals might look like, oh, well, the goalkeeper was diminutive, and that's the cause of it. But she actually was one of Sligo's best performers on the day. So yeah, great for Noelle. Mackenzie chipped in with a goal as well. And overall, I think the squad got the best that they could get out of a fixture like this, Andy, because players came on and off. No one, as far as I could tell, suffered any significant injuries. People were brought on and off at various points to sort of give the defenders a chance to ease themselves into the game, and then Pearl was withdrawn after about an hour or so. Other attackers were kind of oscillated through at different times, so we got to use the squad. And maybe one pointed note I'd have on it as well, Andy, was that on 75 minutes we saw the return of Courtney Maguire in goal for Shells.
Brilliant news, yeah. Great news.
Yeah, she spent 15 months, I believe, out of action with her ACL injury and the recovery that it took to get back from that. And there's been many games that you and I think, discussed this year when we were doing co-coms and so on, where we weren't even naming a sub goalkeeper. So not just to have that, but to have one of her stature back was great. And I thought I'd seen that she was on the card, and I thought, well, do we have any room for sentiment to be given a goal? You know what I mean? To be given a goalkeeper a run in a match. But yeah, there was room for sentiment. I guess we were well out the gate score wise at that stage. But yeah, with 15 minutes to go, Courtney Maguire came back on to play for Shells, and that was very good to see. So that augurs well going forward, Andy.
Yeah, that's a bright note to that game for sure. Donny, we've seen Noelle Murray do some fairly outrageous things over the years. Is it a good thing that Noelle has been, I wouldn't say she's been dropped, but she has started a lot of the most, let's say the last half dozen games on the bench, one or two starts here and there. Is that exactly how you get the best out of Noelle? That sort of Wayne Rooney anger to... She certainly answered her manager if he had any, I wouldn't say he had any doubts, but certainly to come back in and to smack in 4 top-class goals. Noelle's back to her very best.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. As I said, I'm not sure about, I mean, she definitely does play with an edge, regardless whether she's starting or coming in from the bench. And look, let's be fair, I think it could apply to any squad in the country, male or female, to have someone who's come in with the impact that Mackenzie Anthony's had to this Shelburne team. Nobody saw coming. If Mackenzie had come in and done half of what she's done, and we were able to sort of use her as the next player up to maybe, to go between herself and Noelle, sharing the duties, you'd think that was an exceptional return for a player that hitherto we were unaware of. So I think Noelle's fallen just a little bit foul of the circumstance there, where we've got this, wonderful new signing. And I suppose, Father Time is undefeated, and there's going to be an element of having to manage minutes. So look, I mean, the one thing I would say is that to have her in such form now, right on the cusp of the return to league action, is perfect timing. So hopefully we can see the best of both, because obviously herself and Mackenzie started together on Saturday. They both scored. So the idea that you have to have one over the other isn't necessarily so either. So yeah, good signs for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned Davy O'Connor earlier, Donny. I just want to say thanks again to Davy. It was great to get that sort of inside view from within the camp. We had some great feedback from Davy's chat. He covered a lot of subjects, a lot of topics, and yeah, that's what we're trying to do. It's great to have someone from the inside, as I said. And thanks again to Davy. That episode is there I think it's episode 20, just below this one, if you want to listen back. So the draw Donny for the All Ireland Cup was done Saturday evening, I think, and we've been. Is it fair to say we've been handed a favourable draw in Tolka Park against Treaty United?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. You'd always with any cup draw, obviously, you'd like to be drawn at home first and foremost. But I think the fact that we've managed to avoid the likes of, well, on the other side of the draw, it does look a bit stronger. You've got Galway, Shamrock Rovers, and you've got Wexford and Peamount. Um, each of those four teams have, in the not too distant past, have given us headaches of some variety. So, Treaty United, on paper, is a nicer draw. Obviously, we'll have to do the business, but yeah, I think insofar as what you would have hoped for, a home draw, avoiding some of the bigger teams, as discussed there, and then where we to beat Treaty at home, we have the winner of Glentoran against Bows to set up, the final. So, if we're going to do it, this is a pretty nice pathway to it. I've spoken with you about this before, Andy, and I think we mentioned it last week. The idea that this narrative I'm going to drive into the ground that Shell's winning the All Ireland League is what it needs to put it on the map. It certainly seems that the gods have smiled on that notion that we might get to the final this year. So fingers crossed. The home game against Treaty is the next step on the ladder to that final.
It's worth noting that Treaty actually finished above Athlone in their group, and Athlone may have rotated some players, which is their business. But I saw a bit of the Treaty Glentoran game, which finished 2-2, and Treaty, it's the old cliche, but you have to treat them with respect. They're a young side who may feel coming to Talca they've got nothing to lose, and often those ones are the dangerous ones. So those fixtures are for July, I believe. There's a lot more to come ahead of then. So, Donny, this Saturday now, let's cast our mind back. I think it was was March, wasn't it, when we started the league against Rovers? That last gasp defeat to Shamrock Rovers. All the air seemed, well, for me, the air seemed to be taken out of the balloon on day one. But since then, we've seen a fairly lethal and ruthless run of form from the Reds. That's all been building really for what happens this Saturday. This is potentially a title decider, or am I getting too far ahead of myself?
Well, I mean, we're on a podcast here, Andy. We can lay the hyperbole on, slather the hyperbole on as much as we like. I think it's whatever the notch below title decider is. I think that's what it is. I think it's absolutely going to be completely pivotal in the destination, or it could be pivotal in the sense of, I think if we were to lose and we give Athlone a 4-point lead when we have to play them only once more, you know what I mean? That's a huge step towards the title for them. I wouldn't think it was a catastrophe to draw the match if that's what transpires, because we get to go down there and presumably close enough to it, play for all the marbles against them on a later date. So, just shy of a title decider, but certainly absolutely pivotal in the title race. So, yeah, it's very, very big, and I think as well, not just numerically big in that, we'll be top of the table for the first time this season, I think, or certainly with equal games played. I know sometimes there's been evening games and so on where we've maybe won in the afternoon and they played after us, but certainly come midnight, I don't think we've been top all season. So there's a psychological advantage to, beating them on the field. This run that we've been on has been incredible, as you say. all bar that even that draw away to Bohemians, undefeated since that moment against Shamrock Rovers in the last seconds. If you had said that to us then, when everybody was um, just absolutely, as you said, deflated, and it really did feel like a, a hammer blow even so early in the season. It was very peculiar, but yeah, as we said, there were tears and everything on the opening night. It was mad, but this would go a long way to redressing that balance, and to having us being in the ascendancy, then sort of making Athlone have to chase, and their games, suddenly having a bit more air of unpredictability, and maybe, as you said, their run in the All Ireland League has not been as smooth. Now, they, I would imagine, as you alluded to, Andy, that they're probably prioritising. Maybe they're looking at their squad and going, okay, we don't have maybe the depth that Shells might have, to rotate and still, you know, win comfortably. So they've decided to put all their eggs, rightfully so, I suppose, if that's the case, into the league basket. Um, but winning is a habit, and I know, form wise, if you've been conceding goals, and they're not putting out wholesale, 11 new players for those games. So defenders are conceding a bit more. They're used to um, having been winning, and now they're the stickiest patch of the season. I don't think that's bad for us, and certainly maybe if we were to take a lead, let's see how their mentality reacts to that, having been front runners all season so far.
Do you think Owen Weirin will be having any sleepless nights trying to figure out who his starting 11 is now after, particularly, let's say for Noel, for example, she could drop back to the bench, but normally you sort of stick with your winning formula. But this time last year, we played Athlone twice in the league, drew away to Athlone, and then we had that almost end of season disaster, so to speak, losing to Athlone, and we did somewhat make up for that with a cup final thrashing. But these games have been edgy with Athlone. Do you think Owen Weirin will ask his team for a really quick start, try and get a goal ahead, see how it goes, or do you think he'd be a little bit more cautious, just try and see what's, for example, what sort of form Athlone will be in on the day, or is this entirely in Shell's hands as to how they approach it?
It's Jesus. It's very hard. It's like I'm getting goosebumps even listening to you break it down there a bit, because like you could stick or twist. Um, my instinct would be that, like, on this run that we've been on, I think you've got to dance with the person that brought you, and so far being adventurous, uh, trusting in our ability to score goals and being attacking, um, has given us the rewards that we've been looking for. So, um, however, and I say this because in my mind, I was saying it to the group who travelled to the showgrounds on Saturday before, and it was reasonably late before the goals started flowing. It took 35 minutes or so before Shells um, got the advantage on Saturday. Athlone Sligo had the better attempts on goal. They'd actually managed to get on to some sort of long balls that weren't dealt with, and a little wasteful in front of goal. Two shots directly into Amanda McQuillan's midriff, but I couldn't help but think, if that was Athlone, um, I think we were picking the ball out of our net at least once. Um, so with that in my memory fresh, I'm thinking, well, I hope that we kind of got some of the cobwebs out of, blew them off on Saturday, and that we're not going to cough up easy chances. But I think that game plus another week's training should see us right. And I think we have to be brave. It's our home game. We've shown in the past that we can go down to Lissy Wallen and score and do well and get results. Um, But I think with the form that so many of our players in, like we talking about Noel, but you could add, Bambi's been in good form. You could also, obviously, Mackenzie's just in constantly good form. We are, Kate Mooney got more minutes on Saturday. We are a handful attacking wise. And I'd be inclined to say, well, let them have to deal with us. Let them, answer the questions that we pose. So, not to go gung ho, but I think we need to try and put them on the back foot early and hope that we'll have enough to keep them out defensively. And you're absolutely right, Andy, that I wouldn't, I would not want to have to pick the starting 11 because you're going to be upsetting people any way you slice it. There's so many players that have a very, very good argument to be in that team in all areas of the field. But that's good for us as well, that players coming off the bench will feel they have something to prove. And I think ultimately, look, people will know the significance of the game. And the last thing I might say, Andy, on it is, of course, like, not to put a somber note on it, but like we opened the show talking about Avine Clancy's situation, and it's not for me to tell anyone what's appropriate when it comes to mourning and so on. I presume she won't be involved this weekend. You never know. I mean, sometimes people want to just sort of get on with life and to sort of forget about what's happened as much as anything, to sort of have a distraction for an amount of time. But you would hope as well that the players can kind of rally to a point of focus here on her behalf as much as anything else, because she deserves, whether she's involved directly or not. She's helped to get us to this point this season, and I really hope that we can all be in good form and have something to show for our efforts on Saturday evening.
Well, we certainly have a tremendous group of leaders and role models within that team who will do everything, as we said, for Avine. And I'm sure whatever happens on the day, they'll manage themselves, as they always do, to the highest standards. Tony, we've been watching this team now evolve for a number of years. Am I over exaggerating to say that this is the best ever squad Shelburne women have had?
I think you might be right. Again, hyperbole FC, but I think it has to be right. I mean,
I think so. I think so. When you look, it's like two top players for each position, and that to me is how the bar is set. But I let you chip in with
yeah,
your thoughts.
yeah. Don't the rugby lads call it the depth chart?
That's something like that. All I know about rugby is gain lines and the 22. What they are, I couldn't tell you.
Scrum and maul. I've heard the term depth chart, and it always seems to be rugby lads talking about it. But insofar as our own depth chart, I mean, again, like, just the case in point about picking our 11 has never been harder. And that the quality is there, and whoever comes in, whether from the bench or from the start, is more than capable of doing the job to a very high standard. We've obviously had two current players from currently in the team called into Ireland squads recently. I think that speaks volumes. Normally, much like the men's, it's a magic playing situation where they play with us for a while, and then when the season finishes, or something's achieved in red, then the call comes and off they go, and then they'll end up in Ireland squads when they've just completed a pre-season in Bristol or wherever they end up. But so to have two already taking part in squads says a lot. And even look at the two goalkeepers that we spoke about now having Courtney back just shows the depth we have there. So I think we've found a lovely blend. I've sort of spoken before about King or Ball. Noel King's team was it was like the old Atletico Madrid before Diego Simeone came in, and and said, right, that's enough of that scoring 4 and 5 goals a game. But that's what it used to be. We'd win 4-3, we'd win 5-2, that kind of jazz. Which was very enjoyable when it went your way, but it would occasionally leave you open to a sort of a sucker punch and maybe not being great in the game management area of things. Whereas, and I think last year maybe we overcompensated a little bit as Owen and the team were kind of finding their feet. But this is a real lovely blend of pragmatic defending when needs be, but also trusting the players that we have to go and do the job at hand. And the players that we've managed to recruit have been exceptional. And there's been a previous where in recent times you'd get players from the States and you'd get players that you maybe would be less familiar with, and some would be hit and some would be missed. We've had largely all hits now this season to add to what's already a very rich, talented squad. So again, I know we have a match on Friday that we're going to discuss in depth shortly, and I know unfortunately we have another game on Monday that we might touch on as well. But I really would urge everybody. This is an unbelievable team, and we're at a point of the season now where they need and they frankly deserve for what the performances they put in the season since the opening day. They deserve our support. So I'd urge everybody to get out and try and make this place of Tolka a little bit uncomfortable for the opponents arriving on Saturday.
Pearl and the players have said that the noise and the atmosphere in Tolka does make a difference. It really does. So, as you said, Donny, this Saturday in Tolka is a big day. I think it's in conjunction with the Dublin Pride celebrations, but it's going to be a big family day. Even an ice cream van there for you, I think, Donny. So get your 99 in. And but as you said, Donny, this is the big one. So you can park your cups, park everything else for the moment. This is what these women train their backsides off for week after week after week, is to play the best. Athlone, like it or not, they're the champions. They're in town. And of course, Donny, the goal, of course, is the title. But as a result of that, it's European football. And I think we spoke about this recently, is that I think next year it's expanding on the women's side. That's a huge carrot for not just the club financially, but for these players to have the opportunity to play European football. So this game, without trying to over egg it, is a really key and crucial juncture in the season. So just before we move on to the men's stuff, Donny, another cup draw took place last week. The women drawn again at home. A slightly favourable draw again, if I may add, I think, against Galway. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. Could have been a little bit better. Happy enough with the home advantage?
Yeah, as we touched on, Andy, home advantage is your initial port of call. Once you're at home, you'll always fancy your chances a little bit more. Galway may be lacking a little bit of the luster that they'd had in previous seasons, possibly a little more fallible than we've seen them in the last couple of seasons, but I would still be cautious, but cautiously optimistic. Again, it kind of feels almost an irrelevance at this moment because we've just come through one competition. We're now focused utterly on the massive game on Saturday in the league, and then you're talking about, well, what if there's this other, the big cup competition coming down the line in a while, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But frankly, the more games to Tolka, the better. So very happy to see that, and yeah, another winnable game. And I mean, would you put it past this team being able to do a treble? I'm not a gambling man, Andy, but there's dafter bets out there, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say, Tony, that that's their target. And Owen Wearing, and I think Davey may have sort of touched on it last week, that these trophies are there to be won. There's only 3 trophies to win, so like you might as well go for each of them. Ideally, of course, you want the league title, but careers can be short. And once you get to the knockout stages of any competition, you certainly want to win it. So 4 p.m. kickoff Saturday, Tolka Park. Big crowd, hopefully expected. Dunny and I will be there. Dunny, I'm sure, is available for selfies and autographs as usual. Dunny, please the crowd. So if you can
Yes.
get
Or
down,
you can doorstep me for more questions on the pod. I was Gaz O'Reilly's dad doorstepped me with a question regarding Harry Wood that we may touch on
yeah,
later on. But
plenty.
yes,
Okay, so just want to thank everyone as always. We had a great response to Davy's show last week, as I mentioned, and lots of questions and comments coming in as always. You can see all the information on our show notes, how to contact us. Men's team back in action this weekend. Now, this really is when things get interesting. This is the real business end of the season, so a big couple of weeks and months ahead. So, Donny, before the action on Saturday, we see a return to action on Friday evening. Two old foes back in action. Shamrock Rovers are in town in Tolka Park. Is this the ideal fixture, or is it one you personally would have said, let's maybe just give ourselves a week or two just to come back in? I know a lot of players were away enjoying themselves, and we just hope, well, I hope certainly that we see a new look, refreshed, new vibrancy. Am I over um, over enthusing myself, Dunny, or can we expect some sort of reaction now when things resume on Friday?
you might be. I mean, we've had, as men of science, Andy, we've had,
Yes.
19 league games to look at, and the idea that a week on the batter followed by a week back training in the AOL might lead us to some sort of promised land that we couldn't navigate our way to over the previous 19 fixtures seems a little aspirational, but hope isn't a dirty word, so we can still hope. Um, what as to whether Shamrock Rovers is the ideal fixture, I immediately would scoff at the notion. When is in recent times when the Shamrock Rovers ever the ideal fixture? But we have had pretty good performances in patches certainly against them so far this season. 2 draws. We've taken the lead against them twice, home and away, which grates a little considering we didn't see either of them out. And where there were some poor goals conceded in both games, I'd argue. So we tend to get up for Dublin derbies, and certainly with Shamrock Rovers, particularly the way they are now, there's no, yourself going in. There's no margin for error. Nobody is underestimating the task at hand. So you're going in eyes absolutely wide open for what's in front of you and how difficult it's going to be. There's no doubt about that. So if we're talking about is it good to get the players absolutely focused, then yeah. Is it good? Does it improve our chances to get 3 points? I'm not so sure. But where my head is, and other people's mileage will absolutely vary on this, but I'm not so much looking at Friday through the prism of 3 points to get us back in the title race, so much as I'm looking at it as a prism to view where are we going for the rest of the season. And that's like aptitude, application, mentality, those kind of intangibles manifesting themselves into a performance that we can be proud of as a team, as a football club, and show that we're maybe on a road to some sort of minor redemption for this season. That there's a whole lot of stuff to play for this season yet. European places, European football, cup honours, things that would, were we to do some or all of them, would absolutely lead people to feel that they've had an amazing season. And I'm not even talking about winning the league again. I'm talking, top three, getting to a cup final, getting through the first qualifying round in Europe would, I think, unequivocally be an excellent season. So I'm not writing off the league, but I'm saying, like, we need to show a bit of testicular fortitude here as an outfit, um, beyond what Friday might suggest. Because obviously, the papers don't refuse ink. Twitter doesn't refuse shite, and the TV schedule is pumping out the fixture, with the view to say this is a title kind of decider. The last year's upstarts versus the old guard, the royalty of recent times. And I get that's how you have to sell it. But I think as a Shelburne fan, you might have to be a little bit more pragmatic and look at this in the medium to longer term and go, okay, well, where are we fixed beyond Friday night? And that's kind of where my head is. So I'm looking at performance. I'm looking at who's back from injury, um, and can we get those players hopefully in the team and finishing games again. Um, I wouldn't put a result beyond us. My kind of gut feeling, Andy, is that we might end up with another score draw here. And frankly, I know a lot of people are saying it's 3 points or bust, but I think a good performance and a score draw, I wouldn't scoff at that at all.
I think, to be realistic, Dunny, I don't think we are in with a chance of winning the league. I think the damage has been done. If Rovers were to win this, I think they'd be 12 points ahead of us, and surely that's uncatchable. Um, but we shall see what happens. If we park what happened last year, that was incredible stuff. But that's gone now. That's done. The club is growing. It's changing. Mossy Quinn has come in. We've got uh, Kristen Samples in a community. The club is evolving all the time. So should people sort of just brace themselves for the fact that this year we may not win anything, but the most important thing this year surely is that we reach European competition qualification, because that then keeps the potential of securing better players, keeping the investment coming in terms of funding. And look, I think we arrived at the promised land much sooner last year than many would have predicted. So I think everyone should just calm things down for a little bit. Of course, we all want better results, but football is very unpredictable at times. For me personally, I just love to, as you said, I'd just love to see us just establish a bit of ourself again, just to just get back to the Shelburne of the last 18 months or so. And we're not going to win every game, but we just want to see good, decent, solid performances. As you said, see bodies back available, which is key. And who knows, Damien and his crew could have one or two game-changing signings to come in the weeks ahead. You never know. So I just personally, I just think, look, I don't think we're going to win the league this year. That's my view. But there's still a lot to play for. And I'd just love to see us going into this European qualification now in the next month or so in better form than how we finished the summer break. So that's my little piece there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Andy, and that's largely sort of what I'm driving at, in the sense that we shouldn't be a hostage to our success from last year, and use that as the only barometer that we view success through. Just because we won the league last year doesn't give us a right to do it again this year. And I know there are frustrations, and it's this sort of juxtaposition of trying to, like, how do you deal with the now, and you can't just constantly look back and say, well, geez, in 2017, which wasn't long ago, we were, playing in front of 350 people and da da da. You have to move with the times, and you have to have ambition, and so on. And last year we won the league, so we should certainly, have gone into this year wanting and hoping to do the same. But some realism, and there are other things than the league. It's been a long time since we've won the FAI Cup. The FAI Cup gets you into Europe, I don't know if I've ever cheered a goal louder than that Pats goal 2 seasons ago against Bowes to make it 3-1 that qualified us for Europe. That felt unbelievable then, when we were, we hadn't dreamt about winning a league that would come the following year. That was as good as you could have sold to any Shells fan at the time, and that run in towards the end of that season was magical. So we could absolutely have something like that again, be it in the cup or be it to get into Europe by first, second, third, or wherever. So yeah, it's this kind of trying to walk the tightrope, isn't it, Andy? Of want reasonable expectation without getting too high or too low. But I think the issue is we need to start seeing a bit of form, and we can assess in a while where that'll take us, because you don't want us to end up on a European trip with some of the failings that we've seen crop up. It's going to be very hard to get through rounds in the Champions League, for example, if you can't keep any clean sheets. Something simple like that. So, let's deal with the nuts and bolts of it first, and then we'll see where we end up.
We have St. Pat's on Monday night, then. We won't go into that in too much detail because both teams have had a break. But after that, then the Friday after, it's Derry. So that's like, they're three fairly juicy ties, and I won't ask you to say what would your preferred sort of points total be, Dunny. I think the whole point of what we're trying to say here is that we're just looking, hopefully, to see an improvement across the field, and let's see where that takes us. Before we move on, sorry, Dunny, any final thoughts on those games before we move on?
Well, I mean, the return of the Monday fixture again is like a knife to the heart, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was looking back through, looking forward, I should say, through the fixtures just on one of the apps there to see, okay, well, who do we have after Rovers? Because obviously the Rovers one was flagged from a good bit out because of the television and because of the game that it is and so on. But to see, as you said, the Pats game immediately after on the Monday, and again, this idea of doing this for our benefit, giving us 2 weeks off to come back and hit us with 3 games in a week again, just as in the same week that we're going to find out our European opponents, just flogging us like animals. I tell you, we could, we had Davey on last week. I'm fairly positive if you asked him if that was good practice, if that's best practice, to give players weeks with no matches and then come back and give them 3 matches in a week, I know what he would say. So I get the impression, I don't think it's just my own little bubble, but that this is becoming a bigger narrative now, and that fans from other clubs and people more generally around the league are crying for the league to be elongated to the end of November, because it seems that this year in particular is particularly poorly planned. So look, these Monday, Friday ones, who knows? Look, I'd be more the issue with Pats and Derry is like, if we're saying that it's quite likely that Rovers are potentially uncatchable, or the least, the one that's going to be hardest to catch, Pats and Derry are going to be thereabouts. I think we can probably say that. So in some respects, they're the ones that you can't really afford to be hemorrhaging and points against. And we had an insipid performance against Derry the last time, so I'd like to see a bit of a reaction there. But yeah, they're the ones that might actually end up counting a little bit more than our duels with Shamrock Rovers when push comes to shove. So, but we'll dissect that when the time comes, Andy.
We have a question from Stephen Lesware. Stephen's keeping this short and sweet. Any transfer news or targets? Well, I haven't got a clue. Dunny, have you got your ear to the ground?
Where's the hyperbole, Andy? I haven't got a clue. My ear is normally pretty close to the ground on these things, and I didn't go knocking on doors asking for rumours, but I was quite surprised that the normal channel, the back channels and the corridors of rumour and whispers, pretty quiet, about as quiet as I can remember. The only the only rumor that I believe to be true is that we've seen the last of Ray Tulloch. I don't think you'll see Ray Tulloch in a Shelburne shirt again. Um, I believe he's free to find another club, is my understanding. Whether if he's not able to find another club, he's under contract with us to the end of the season. But that was a question that came up pretty frequently to us here on the pod, Andy. People saying, his name was mentioned in dispatches more often than others about where is he. So, look, I mentioned the term bomb squad and whatnot before, and I think if it's just a one-man bomb squad this year, then that's better than other years possibly. So, yeah, I think we've seen the last of Ray. And my gut tells me, and it's just a hunch, that the transfers that we're likely to get in won't be names that we've heard, as in they won't be sort of familiar League of Ireland players who've played for other clubs, or certainly ex-players who've gone to the UK and whatnot. I don't think we'll see any of them. I think the signings that we're likely to see would probably be more in the James Norris kind of vein. Data-driven, probably younger guys from abroad would be my guess. But I don't have any definitive names so far, other than to say that, as I said, I think Ray's race has run.
We will see. You mentioned a good red Gaz O'Reilly. I think his dad is a Papa Gaz. He sent in a question here. Sent in a question only regarding everyone's favourite Englishman, Mr. Harry Wood. I don't have the exact phrasing, but he's basically asking, why is Harry Wood constantly getting the shepherd's hook after 75 odd minutes? Is it game? Is it managing his minutes, as it's called, or because like he's been, yeah, I thought he's been good this season, but a lot of people have picked up on that. Is when Harry's involved in stuff, you check your watch, 70 minutes, and you check your watch, go, okay, 5 minutes time, and then there you go, Harry Wood is whipped off. Is there anything to that, or are people just making something out of nothing?
No, I don't think. Was it Tony Montana said that the eyes never lied, Chico? And it's certainly the eye test would tell you that Harry Wood has been one of our more consistent performers all season, and one of our more creative guys, making things happen. And it's been great to see. In a year hitherto that's been a bit hard to. We're a little bit short of consistency. Harry's provided it, so I think we might have discussed it on here before, Andy, that there seems to be a sort of a mental impediment in management to play Wood and Coote on the same team at the same time. I don't have the stats to hand as to how many times or how many minutes they may have played together, but I kind of feel that, largely speaking, it's been one or the other. And Harry, it was put to me that his shepherd's hook, as you put it, I like that phrase. It came earlier again, like down in Cork and so on. Like, we're starting to see the hook coming out 60 minutes, 45 minutes, and is he a bit of a fall guy? I've a feeling it's half the Coote thing. And look, Coote's come on, and this is the thing, like, when Coote comes on and slaps one in from 25 yards into the bottom corner in Cork, you said, well, there you are, I don't see why we couldn't maybe have the two of them on the field together more often. Obviously, they play in similar-ish areas of the field. I think Harry's a bit more versatile than Ali, but then Ali's had his minutes curtailed a little bit this season. He's not completely unversatile himself. So yeah, a bit of an easy target maybe. I don't think there's any malice in it, though. Like, I wouldn't say, we had issues previous this year where Meepo was, and Duff were public about their kind of, that there was a bit of animosity, a bit of, sulking around the training ground or whatever about being hooked or not getting sufficient minutes. Harry's not that guy, um, and I think Duff and he have a pretty overtly good relationship. But he does seem to be getting the short end of the stick a little bit there, where others maybe who are performing less well um, are seeing the end of matches more frequently than he. So it isn't just if you think it's you who's noticed that, it's not just you. There's many of us out there. So a few reasons there, but yeah, I'd like to see Harry stay on a bit longer personally going forward.
Okay, well, Harry, you've heard it here. We'd like to see more Harry Wood. Donny, before we wrap up, FAI Cup draw was done as well last week on the men's side. I may or may not be correct here, but I think this could be the first meeting of Fairview Rangers from Limerick against the League of Ireland champions Shelburne in a couple of weeks, few weeks. Are you looking forward to your trip to Limerick?
Not overly. um, I think years ago in the first division, when we were bringing the Shane Shuttle, had about 16 or 18 people, and I think Barry Crossan got hit in the back of the head with a hurl down in Limerick at a at a first division game. Hopefully, no more of that.
Justice for
But
Barry, yeah.
there was some wild times down there, absolutely wild times. It was a lawless first division, on and off in the stands and elsewhere. But I was actually driving in the car listening to the reaction to the draw, and I think on News Talk, one of their senior reporters was mentioning how that must be one of the closest derby draws um, in the history of the FAI Cup,
Oh dear.
saying that Tolka Park and Fairview Park were a stone throw from one another, and someone with the computer near them put them right fairly rapid. But look, I mean, only for the fact that we're not at home, uh, it's ideal. Like, again, I think there have been years where we've been preoccupied, justifiably, I think, by whether it's promotion from the first division, consolidation of places in the league and whatnot, where we haven't really had the luxury, maybe, or the bandwidth mentally to sort of think forward to a cup final. I feel, as we've sort of touched on already this evening, Andy, that this year might be bringing the cup final due to the realities around us in the league, that the cup final might actually be taking on a greater significance. So to get through a round, now the only drawback is there's been no Premier teams drawn against one another, so the likelihood is all the Premier teams will progress. But that said, being in the hat is the main thing. It's not a terribly risky game on paper, you would say, touch wood. And for those who travel down, I remember, like, I was a shell of a man out in the Carlisle grounds, but between
Not the only one done.
Between the return from Gibraltar and the trip to Zurich, whenever we squeezed that game against Bray in, I was barely able to sustain verticality for 90 minutes watching the thing. So it'll be a hardy bunch. I imagine that'll take the train or whatever down to Limerick, but it should be a good day. But yeah, getting through is massive, and I think Damien Duff has often spoken about the cup as being something that he really, really values, domestic cups. And obviously in his first year in the job here, he led us to the final. So I would think that he would have a strong view on the cup this year as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be one for the app merchants to tick off on the Footballology app, no doubt. And hopefully we get in and and threw it unscathed and into the hat again for the next round. And yeah, maybe avoid some of the big hitters in that round. That might be nice as well.
Yeah, I think the fixture itself is, as you said, is sandwiched in between the European games. So a lot will depend how the Champions League tie goes as to when the cup will be played. I think we'll be playing Tuesday, Wednesday in the Champions League, Donny. And you would kind of think that Fairview may prefer to play on a Sunday, but that's just my own guessing. I could be completely wrong. But let's wait and see.
I've heard people, suggest it could be a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see how that progresses. As we said, Donny, just before we wrap up, this time next week, you'll have your Speedos packed. You'll have your whatever else you're bringing to God knows where. Could we be going to Breedebilk or Malmo, Vilnius, the New Saints, or could we possibly be heading back to La Linea to play our buddies Lincoln Red Imps across the border? We'll know more this time next week.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I don't think I'll be wearing the Speedos and the sombrero to TNS, but you never know. uh, the draw is this day week, probably 6 days time from when most people will be listening to this, and the day before, of course, we'll really be able to focus the minds a bit more because there's 14 potential teams that we can draw. We've discussed, the ones that are more likely than less likely, but there'll be probably 3 pots divided out of those 15 teams that we can get the day prior to the draw, based on regionalization. So we should know in 6 days' time from time of recording the 4 or 5 potential teams that we have. So it'll be boiled down again. I did get one horrifying piece of information in the last week regarding our good friends in southern Spain.
Oh dear!
And that the Victoria Stadium, which the national team in inverted commas of Gibraltar play in, or have hitherto played in, was, remember, they got the dispensation last year to play in Europa Point because it was undergoing renovation. It has since been demolished to the ground.
And
It's
that
been
is the stadium
completely
beside the airport, Dunny, isn't that correct?
correct.
Beside
Yeah,
the runway, yeah. For any
yeah,
linear Reds who may have foggy memories.
yeah. We walked past it on the day of the match. This stadium that wasn't apparently fit for purpose, 5,000 seats,
Looks fine
and
to me.
the team were in there doing a warm up. They were out in the pitch knocking, and a, there wasn't any construction of any kind that we could see going on. They've since started the construction because they've leveled the place completely. So they've got another dispensation for the coming season for all their European teams to play out of, you guessed it, Europa Point again. So if we were to draw the Red Imps, we would be staring down the barrel of another ticket fiasco, debacle, and
Cold pizza.
Yeah, we'd have to do it all over again.
Wow.
So that I didn't know that at time of recording when we discussed the ins and outs of my top picks for the draw. Now again, on the field, it's still one of the more winnable ties, but that did send a shiver up my spine. The idea of having to deal with all that nonsense again.
Well, on that cheerful point, we will know more. Our man on the ground, Mr. Lee Daly. If you want to listen back to, I think it's episode 19, Dunny and Lee, in retrospect, did a very accurate assessment of the teams who were likely to get. My money is on the New Saints. Let's go over to see our Celtic cousins in the valleys.
I'd love that.
And yeah, it would be a nice and hopefully a favourable draw. But yeah, keep your eyes on things next Monday. We'll have that 14 team potential opponents whittled down to a slightly smaller group so we can start to feel the excitement building. So, Donny, that's it for this week. We have a lot to get through on the field in the next couple of days. If anyone can get down to Tolka Friday, Saturday, it would be great to see you. And when we speak to you next week, it's next Monday is the Pats game. So more than likely we'll speak to you next Tuesday when we'll know our European opponents. So Donny, thanks again for everything. Wishing you a very happy week ahead. And we'll speak to
Thanks,
everyone
Andy.
next week.
Exciting times.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a Reds fan. And we'll speak to everyone next week.